Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful week of poking and ponging. I am your host, Maui, and last week I built a whole bunch of generators, and I started working on the machinery to provide fuel for them. We left off with a mostly complete and untested fuel production process. Well, I have been busy. As you can already see, things are in motion. I did indeed have to redo some stuff. But at the core, this is the same machine that we had before. And it is running. So let's walk through this. Basically, we've got our wheat farm over here. The wheat and the seeds are being sent off to the warehouse. Then the production room over here calls the wheat and the seeds from the warehouse to be turned into fuel. And you'll also notice that there is a third package on there. Those packages are coming from here. I have set up a temporary enderic laser to make fluxite for the turbo fuel. Same deal here. Fluxite's being sent off to main storage and then called back out by the turbo fuel. And you may be thinking that this seems like a really roundabout way to do things, where I'm like making it and sending it off and calling it back just so it can go like 10 blocks. But there's a reason for this. And the reason is that one, I want to have all of my resources accessible from the storage terminals. And the other reason, which is kind of the same reason, is that it's very likely that multiple rooms in the facility are going to need wheat, seeds, fluxite, etc. And so I would rather have all of them being stored in the warehouse so that they can be sent wherever they need to go, rather than having to set up a custom, like, logistics line for each one. As for the actual fuel production, it is very much the same as it was. All of the items are coming into this vault here. Wheat and seeds get sent out this way. The wheat is packed into packed wheat, and then the packed wheat and the seeds go into this pulverizer, where they are turned into biomass. The biomass then goes into this centrifuge, along with some water, where it is turned into biofuel. The biofuel is pumped into this second centrifuge, along with the fluxite, where it is turned into turbo fuel. And the turbo fuel is put into this tank. Currently, I have 2 tanks here, because I had to expand the room a little bit, and the original tank already had turbo fuel in it. So I'm just waiting for this tank to run out of fuel, and then I will put this tank up on the top so that it's just one big tank, and I'll just extend this pipe a little bit. Alternatively, I might actually keep it as 2 tanks, just because I like how it looks. But that depends on what I'm gonna do next. So, currently, I just have the items being called one at a time. You can see I've got some factory gauges on the packager here. These are monitoring the number of each item inside this vault. So you can see if there is ever less than a 1 item of each in the vault, it will call one of that item. And this works okay, but I would like it to be smarter than that. And I don't know if this is possible, but what I would like to do is monitor the fill level of the turbo fuel tank. And if the turbo fuel tank drops below a certain capacity, it will order a batch of items to refill the tank. This would be very easy if my output resource was not a liquid. because the factory gauges are really only designed to work with, like, items in an inventory. But there might be a way to do it. So we're going to experiment and see if we can figure that out. So here I am in a single-player creative world, and I figured I would just show you guys my thought process and the experiments that I did before arriving at the final design that I'll show in just a minute. So to recap, the problem is that I need to track the fill level of a fluid tank and order a batch of items based on that fill level. And this is a problem because the factory gauges in Create they only really work with items in inventories, not fluids in tanks. So my first idea was something using comparator logic. I had the idea that I could have a pair of inventories, in this case hoppers, passing items back and forth to basically mirror the fill level of the tank. So the current configuration is for a full tank. This analog lever is representing the tank. And the more powered the lever is, the more full the tank is. So this lever is fully powered, representing a fully filled tank. And you can see that the full hopper is full of items. And if I empty the tank a little bit, you can see this comparator turns off and this hopper begins to drain. And this hopper will drain until the signal strength of this comparator here, or sorry, of this comparator on the right, matches the signal strength of this redstone, which is represented by the analog lever. And the way that would work is that comparators can read the fill level of tanks. So this lever would just be a comparator and then the tank next to it, right? So you can see here they've stopped draining. I've got signal strength 10 coming out of the full side, and signal strength 10 on the tank fill level. I can keep going down even more, and once again, the hopper will begin draining until this comparator on the right matches the signal strength of this redstone wire. You can see it's still draining. Gets to 5, this turns back on. We're all good. Same way on the other side. If I fill the tank, the items will start transferring back the other direction until this comparator on the left matches the signal strength here. Or, no, sorry, I misspoke again. It's all based on this right-hand comparator. This one on the left is the inverse of the signal strength, right? So if this is 10, this is 5. And these two will always add to 15. If I increase this more, this is now 13. This one will reduce until it gets to 2, right? This would work. And the way I would get any sort of actual output from this is I would attach a packager on here, and I would network it, and I'd put a factory gauge, and the factory gauge would basically monitor the fill level of this hopper, which is the same as the fill level of the tank, right? So that would work, but it's pretty complex, uses a lot of hoppers, and it's slow, right? It updates, the update rate is limited by hopper item speed. So I thought a little more, and I came up with a simpler design, a much simpler design. This one uses, once again, a pair of hoppers. This barrel is representing the fluid tank, and these shovels are representing the amount of fluid in the tank. So the way this one works is I just have a singular dummy item in the hoppers. And the threshold switch is set to whatever I want the fill level of the tank to be. In this case, it's about 90%. So you can see here, the fluid tank, quote-unquote, fluid tank, is currently full. and we are displaying 1 of 1 redstone dust on the factory gauge here. If I remove items so that the fluid tank is now below 90% fill level, you can see the redstone dust has switched to the other hopper, and we're now reading 0 of 1. And that condition would trigger an item order, which would then refill the fluid tank and return the redstone dust, bringing us back to 1 of 1. Right? This is a fantastic design. It's really compact, fixes the speed issue of the first design, but it has one glaring flaw, which is that this hopper right here has to be on the same network that I'm ordering all the items from. So my dummy item would appear in my storage system. And then I would have to do like a system to basically reroute that item back into the hopper like this, which you can see has already caused issues with just this little mock-up here. So really just not the ideal solution, and it could be better. And that brings us to this design. As I had already committed to design 2, and as I was crafting the items to make this design, I discovered this component, the redstone requester, and suddenly my problems were solved. So, this is the whole setup. Once again, we have a barrel and a threshold switch. The barrel represents the fluid tank, and the threshold switch tracks the fill level. Key difference is that this threshold switch has an inverted signal. Now, what does the redstone requester do? Well, it requests items. So, when the fill level reaches the designated threshold, it orders exactly what I want from the storage and outputs it. No dummy items, no weird delays. This is the solution that I was looking for. So that is what I'm going to build. I really hope any of that made sense. I have a tendency to just kind of incoherently ramble when I'm trying to explain things. So hopefully me setting it up here will make it a bit more clear what's actually going on. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put the threshold switch right there, and the redstone requester attached to it. And I'm going to come into my threshold switch here, invert the signal, and I'm going to change this to 367 buckets. Oops, 360. Come on. 7. There. I've decided to keep the tanks split like this, and so 367 is basically the level that the bigger tank needs to be at for both tanks together to be 90% full. So now that I have this, I need to actually pick my requester back up, and I need to go link it to the storage system. So I click on the stock ticker, and then I come back over here, I place it, and now I can set an order in the requester, and it will, whenever the tank here is below 90%, it will order a batch of items to fill it back up. What I'm not sure of is, will it, like, repeatedly order? Or will I have to set up some sort of clock to make sure it continues to order until this is full? We shall find out shortly. My suspicions were correct. The redstone requester does not repeatedly make requests. So I have added this component. This is a pulse timer, and it does exactly what it sounds like. As long as the back is unpowered, it will just emit pulses on an adjustable timer. So currently I've got it set to pulse once every minute to submit an order. I have chosen this as the order. This will create 2 buckets of turbo fuel per order. However, I may do away with the wheat seeds, because they just take way longer to process, and are so much less impactful than the wheat is. I believe I would be better off building a little mechanism in the farm room to filter out the seeds and turn them into bone meal. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. But that can wait until some other time. I went ahead and got the requests dialed in here. We're doing 20 wheat and 8 fluxite every 3 minutes now. Went ahead and removed the seeds because I am going to do the bone meal thing, just not right now. So this is making 8 buckets of turbo fuel roughly every 3 minutes. And that is way more fuel than I'm consuming currently. So next up, I need to go get all the rest of the generators hooked up, so that they're actually running, and then I can get my chain conveyors here and all the rest of the facility electrified. And there we go. Got all the generators hooked up. Looking pretty nice, if I do say so myself. Got a bit of an infestation here. Get out of here. I went ahead and I moved the motor down here into the generator room, because, well, it's the generator room. That just makes sense, right? So, next up on the agenda, I need to get some raw material production going. I'm thinking iron, gold, and redstone are like the 3 big ones that I'm gonna need. Slight problem with that last one. Redstone is really complicated to make. Let me show you this. So, in order to make redstone dust, you gotta pour Potion of Strength onto Cinder Flour. Cinder Flour you get by crushing netherrack, and netherrack can be crafted using cobblestone, cinder flour, and lava. This is not a default create recipe. This is added by one of the add-ons. And you'll notice cinder flour is part of the recipe to make cinder flour. That's because when you crush the netherrack, you get 1.5 cinder flour. You get 1 and a 50% chance of 2. This also requires lava, which means I'm gonna need an infinite source of lava, which means I need either I have to superheat mix cobblestone, and getting superheated is a whole ordeal in itself, or I need to get an infinite lava source, which means I need a pool of lava that is 10,000 blocks in volume or more. And then the second part of the redstone recipe is the strength potion, which means that I have to set up automated brewing for strength. Here we go, strength potion. So, Potion of Strength is awkward potion and blaze powder. So, in order to automate redstone production, I need a giant lava pool, or a superheated blaze burner. I need a blaze farm and a nether wart farm. So this is gonna be quite the project, but it is necessary because redstone is a vital ingredient for power cables, and kind of need those. So I'll check in when I've got some progress. So, slight change of plans. As I was going through all the recipes, I realized that a lot of vital ingredients can be crafted just from quartz and cobblestone. And then I started going down a rabbit hole of how to actually control all of the production. And so I decided it would be a good idea to go ahead and carve out the space for the control room. And that is what you see here behind me. I've carved out this gigantic window in the lobby here. And this is where the control room is going to be. I'm going to have a big ol' like board up here. I'm going to have like a raised platform. Actually, I'll probably put the board on this side. There's going to be a big old board with like tracking all of the production and like the levels of everything, and it's going to be super cool. And I'm going to split up the actual like production steps into more like separated pieces, right? So for the iron farm, instead of having like a cobble generator directly into a crushing wheel that goes into the like the washer, right? The cobblestone is going to be produced elsewhere. I'm going to have a single dedicated cobblestone room that then distributes cobblestone to everywhere else that it's needed. Same with the quartz, right? And like once the iron room is done, the iron will be distributed everywhere. And all of that will be controlled from the giant control panel. I have also made a hallway. Decided to do a little like branch off from the main hall here. And this is where I'm gonna put cobblestone and quartz and andesite, probably iron in here as well. I'm just gonna put like the basic like create components on, not components, resources on this hallway. And then once those are done, then I will get started on the redstone. And it's just that easy. I've made a nice little cobble gen here. Rather efficient, as you can see. This is probably so much faster than I'm ever gonna need. And currently it doesn't have any limiters on it. So this is just gonna fill up my storage for now. That's alright though, I'm not too worried about it. Because of my good friend, the factory gauge. I've shown these a couple times now, but I don't think I've properly explained how they actually work. Basically, the factory gauge is a monitor and controller for production networks. It can do a whole lot of different things. And in this case, I'm going to use it to put an automatic stop on the cobblestone generator. So I take my factory gauge and I link it to my storage network. Then I come up here to my little board that I've prepared. And I place the factory gauge on the board here. Now, what I want to do is I come down here, I get a piece of cobblestone, and I put the cobblestone in the factory gauge. Now, you can see it is displaying the amount of cobblestone that is in the warehouse. And there's a lot of different things I can do with this. So if I hold right-click, I can set a target amount here. So let's say I set this to like 30 stacks, right? And you can see currently I'm at 129 stacks out of 30. if I just regular right-click, I can set, like, orders and crafting recipes and all kinds of stuff on here. But what I'm interested in is actually the functionality that these have with the redstone link. What I can do here is I place a redstone link down, and then I take my wrench, or actually just anything. You right-click, and I click Add New Connection. Then I go over to the redstone link, right-click, and you can see a connection has been made here. And this will power the redstone link whenever the threshold is reached, right? So let's say I set this to... That's funny. I literally cannot go any higher than 100 stacks. So because the cobblestone is over the threshold, once I link this up like that, you can see over here, I have already prepared a redstone link to stop the cobble generator from running. And so it's just that simple. The cobble generator is now halted, and it won't run again until the cobblestone falls below the threshold amount. And I should mention as well that this, what I've just shown, was possible before the factory gauges were added. They just make it a whole lot easier to manage. And the factory gauges have a lot of extra functionality that makes them super useful, that we will get into later. And another one down. This here's the quartz production room. Pretty simple, nothing too fancy. And that's because the real fancy part is going to come with the factory gauges. So here we are back at the gauge board. You can see I have rearranged what we had previously to make room for the new addition. So just like before, we got to start by linking our factory gauge to the storage network. Then we come back up here, place it on the board, and put some quartz in it. So, just like before, this is now monitoring the amount of quartz in the storage. So we come in here, we set a threshold. I'm going to do 8 stacks. You can see we're currently below the threshold. And now we click on the quartz gauge, add a new connection, and then click on the cobblestone gauge. And this will connect these two gauges together. Now, you can see here, we are missing a target address. So we come in here and put in the address for the quartz. And then up here, you can see we've got a recipe. And what this means is that the system is going to automatically send cobblestone to produce quartz, and we can change the amount. So here, I'm going to set this to send a stack of cobblestone, and the amount that that will produce is a little bit less than 31. So we're going to set this to 30. Going to set the promises to expire after 1 minute and save. And now you can see we got a green light and we have the connection turned blue. And if we go ahead and look down here, we can see things are already in motion. So let's chase one of these packages down the hall. And you can see cobblestone is arriving at the quartz room. And processing has already started. Now, I've got a bit of stuff in the vault here from when I was testing before this clip. And just like with all the other rooms, once this vault fills up a certain amount, it'll send a package back to the warehouse. And once that threshold value of quartz has been reached of 8 stacks, cobblestone will stop being ordered automatically. And that right there is the basis for the entire control room and how the whole facility will be operated. We're going to have a gigantic wall, basically, you know, as much of this wall as necessary, just completely filled with factory gauges, all connected to each other, all like automatically requesting items and sending them around, and it is going to be so sick. So I hope you're excited for that. Round 3, baby. We got diorite, andesite, and granite this time. I decided to do these in like a triple room, so it's like one big room that does all 3 of them. I've also added these little plaques above each of the doors. I think it looks real nice. And this room features yet another use of the factory gauge that I'd like to show you. So you'll notice in the diorite section of the room, we have a mechanical crafter here. 3x3 mechanical crafter, and that is because diorite is a shaped recipe. It has to go in the orientation with the 2 cobble and the 2 quartz on the diagonals. And the way that the crafter knows to put the ingredients in that shape is with, you guessed it, a factory gauge. So let's fly back out and see what that looks like. So here is our new gauge board. You can see I have added in the 3 new items and also rearranged it a bit. The granite and the andesite work just like you've seen already, and the diorite, you can see, has a little bit of a different recipe or look here. I have enabled this use mechanical crafting setting, and it arranges it, you know, in the shape that it needs to be. And basically, when the gauge orders a batch of items, it will like encode this recipe information into the items, into the package, I mean. And so when the package arrives at the crafter, you can see the package is being unpacked directly into the mechanical crafter, and it tells the crafter how to arrange the items. Well, guys, we have a pretty big problem on our hands. Due to a design oversight, I have completely run out of fuel, and the factory is no longer running. So let me explain what happened here. As you know, my turbo fuel is all being produced from this wheat farm here. And wheat farms only run when there are players nearby. Broad overview is that the game uses a system called random ticks to make wheat grow, and random ticks happen in a radius around players. Chunk loading the wheat farm will not fix this issue. It has to have a player nearby. And due to the, you know, long periods of time when I'm not logged in, aka sleeping or at work, there's just no wheat being produced, so there's no fuel being produced, and it all runs out. So the way I'm gonna solve this is I'm going to build a chunk loader here, and I'm going to build a random tick detector. There's many methods you can use to do this, but the one I'm going to use is farmland hydration. Basically, farmland getting hydrated or dehydrated is also based on the random tick system. So I'm gonna put essentially another crop farm underneath this one, and it's going to, like, place and unplace a water bucket to cause the farmland to constantly hydrate and unhydrate, but it will only do that if there's players nearby, and then I can use observers to detect that, and basically only run the factory when there's a player nearby. And it is just that easy. Now you may notice this looks a lot like a wheat farm, and that's because it basically is a wheat farm. Like I said, I'm using the hydration state of the farmland to detect random ticks. So you can see down underneath, I have a whole bunch of observers, and every time a farmland changes its hydration state, you can see the redstone pulses here. Every time the redstone pulses, it activates this dispenser in the middle, which places or picks up the water. And the effect of that is that the farmland will always be in this, like, state of hydrating or drying out, right? So you can see here, the water is present, and as soon as one of these dry ones hydrates, the water will go away. And then when the water isn't here, as soon as one of them dehydrates, the water reappears. The reason that I have planted wheat on this is because if the farmland is dry for too long, it'll just turn back into dirt, and the wheat being there prevents that from happening. And then the final piece of this is this pulse extender down here. Every time the redstone pulses, it refreshes the timer on this pulse extender. I currently have it set to 1 minute, and then this pulse extender is running into a redstone link, which is connected to this piston down here in the generator room. And this piston is holding on to this energy pipe. So if I go out of random tick range for 1 minute, this the farmland will stop receiving random ticks, so it will be frozen in its current state. There will be no more redstone pulses, and the pulse extender will slowly decay, and then 1 minute later, it will unpower, and the piston will retract, which will cut power to everything. It'll cut power to the motors once I place them back in, and it'll cut power to the electricity cable output here. And then as soon as I get back in random tick range, the farmland will start updating again, and the power will be reconnected. Now, theoretically, this will work without a chunk loader, but I'd like to add one in just in case to make sure the redstone can still function when there's nobody around. Because redstone is based on loaded chunks, and if there's no players around, then the redstone might also get locked up and, you know, the problem won't actually be solved. And here's the chunk loader done. Just really simple. And I put it down as far down as I could go to hopefully minimize the risk of it linking up with other portals in the future. I also went ahead and installed an additional safety measure. This little backpack here has a magnet upgrade in it. And so in the event that these motors break again, they will automatically get sucked into the backpack, so I won't lose them again. And now that everything's running, I can go ahead and demonstrate the random tick cutoff system. So here, I'm going to simulate a player exiting random tick range. And you can see the piston retracts, the power is cut, the motors immediately stop turning, all the machines up here have stopped processing, The engines are still running, but that is only so that they can fill up their internal energy buffers. Once those are full, the engines will stop running and stop consuming fuel. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so very much for watching, if you made it this far. I know these videos have been pretty long. I'm really trying to get them shorter. It's hard to get a whole week into, you know, like 20, 30 minutes. So, we're working on it, though. As usual, please do like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. And I will see you all next week. Bye!
Mud Beast 34!
No, not that one. Mud Beast 3! Here, just... Mud Beast 3. There we go.
Mud Beast hash.
Mud Beast 3. Bruh, I'm busy. Wait, actually, spawn a... Here, spawn a new Vex. Vex combat! Okay, why do mine suck at their jobs? Yeah, yeah! Fight! They are really not good at killing each other, huh? Dude, my Vexes suck ass. I don't think they've gotten a single hit. Oh, there we go. Yeah! Oh, dear God. Infestation.
Yeah, they gave up chasing you about halfway up.
Yeah, well, but I can't go back down there. Do spawn egg Vexes still die after, like, a minute, or are they just there? Oh my God. Most irresponsible server admin in existence. Okay, I do see them disappearing. You should do it to Scrub instead.
I was just turning to look at him.
It's got a backpack on. Oh, he's fighting them. Oh yeah, they don't stand a chance. Oh my God. If only I had been wizard maxing instead of technology maxing, I could do that.
There.
Well, that's ominous.
It's nothing harmful. We should go take a look. You have a Pong guarantee. It is nothing hostile.
So, yeah, a Pong guarantee is like opposite day. Alright, I know how this works.
Hey, I honor my Pong guarantees.
Oh my God.
See? Nothing hostile.
Dude, look, I'm like walking through the wheat field right now.
Let's see what Scrub thinks of this.
Oh, hi, Scrub. I have an infestation. Can you help me deal with this?
Yep.
Oh,